Hello, everybody. I'm really happy to have taken part in the Polyglot Conference this year. If you haven't yet signed up to the Polyglot Conference, the rooms are still going to be open for a while yet for you to see the presentations there. I think it's another 2 weeks you've got. So it's been extended for that extra period of time. The presentations are really good. They are quite varied. Here's some screenshots from them from earlier in the week. And you can see that there are presentations in different languages. They're on different topics from systems of learning language to the science behind language. So, for example, there's a talk on the polyglot science, it's called, and it's about some scientists who did some research on the activities in the brain when a polyglot speaks multiple languages compared to as people, monolingual people or even bilingual as well. So that was really fascinating. And there's some kind of correlation between Asperger's, autism, and language learning in that presentation as well. So if you find that kind of thing interesting, I recommend you watch that. So to sign up to the Polyglot Conference, you only need to make a donation. So you can go to polyglotconference.com. All the information is on there. And there's also a forum where you can have a username and chat to people without being in a chat room. You can just type a chat and look at threads of discussions on there. The chat rooms are still going to be available for a little while, but the format of the chat rooms were arranged such like a planetary system. And the Earth part of the planetary system was all the different languages where you could go into a room and choose, say, Slavic languages or Germanic languages or French or Chinese, that kind of thing. The other planets were to do with specific things. So the Mars planet, for example, was about lessons, Italki lessons, or was that Mercury? I think that might be Mercury, but the Mars was about learning as well. So, for example, I went to a talk on Sanskrit and the language, and it was presented by a 16-year-old man from USA, and he's been learning Sanskrit for 9 years, which was really impressive. So some of those planets will disappear shortly, and we'll be left with just a couple of chat rooms. But the good news is that some of those chat rooms are going to be left open for a whole year. So, it's a really good forum for meeting other people who are mad on learning languages. And you don't need to speak, tons of languages to be part of the polyglot community. It's just someone who's interested in language learning and the idea of multiple languages or linguistics or anything to do with languages, really. So I recommend you join the Polyglot Conference. And next year, hopefully, it will be in Mexico, in Cholula. And I spent most of my time in the chat rooms trying to practice my languages, or just simply speaking English and chatting about language learning in general. So it was so great to meet so many people and to meet up with people I'd previously met at other polyglot conferences, because I've been to 2 in the past. So I'm going to try and speak all the languages that I've spoken so far at the conference in the chat rooms. But before that, I just want to say that I work in a shop and it opened this week too. So I was able to return to my shop, reopen it, and actually spoke lots of languages on the first day we opened. So just by chance, as there were a few customers who couldn't speak English. So I spoke Chinese, Russian, Romanian, Polish, French, Spanish, and Italian on the first day I was working. First day we opened the shop, which was brilliant for me. And one of my colleagues rang me up later in the day to see how things were going. And she was curious to see how much sales we'd done and to see how we'd, how the shop was going with the new COVID regulations. And I said, oh yeah, the shop's done really well. I've spoken Russian, Chinese, and etc. And she laughed and said, I'll trust you to be looking at it like that. But no, the shop did quite well financially, so no problem at all. So the area where people could meet up was arranged like a planetary system. and the Earth space was divided up into language groups or languages. So there was an English, a French, a Spanish, and at first it was arranged differently, and then it was tweaked as the week went on. So I kept popping in the Chinese room to see if people were in there, and I found sometimes there were people in there. So 我说普通话，我认识了新的朋友，我很高兴，因为我在中国聊天的饭店的时候，我说只普通话，我说德国、法国和西班牙语和意大利语。So I just said that I only spoke Chinese when I was in the Chinese chat room. Hopefully that's what I said. Ich habe mit Leuten in einem Chatraum gesprochen. Ich habe gesprochen zum Essen und Trinken und Essen und Kochen. Zum Thema Essen und Kochen. Auf Deutsch. Mit 4 oder 5 andere Leuten. Ich dachte dann, ich kann kein Deutsch sprechen, aber es war in Ordnung. Ich glaube schon. Ich weiß, nicht ich weiß, ich glaube schon. La langue que je parlais le plus était français, à cause de j'ai trouvé beaucoup de gens dans les salles de discussion, dans les chatrooms. Pour la plupart, je n'ai trouvé pas de gens dans les autres salles. J'ai retourné quelquefois à la même salle en français. Cette année, je crois que beaucoup de personnes ont besoin de parler français. J'ai remarqué qu'il y a beaucoup de personnes orientales qui ont besoin de parler français, comme les Coréens et les Chinois. J'ai discuté en le sujet de, je ne sais pas, la philosophie, les langues, comment enseigner les langues et comment apprendre les langues. Ho parlato un po' di italiano con una signora dalla Germania. Ha parlato molto velocemente, molto velocemente per me. Era abbastanza fluente. A volte non la capivo tutti. Ho dovuto chiederle al ripetere per me. Encontré mucha gente que hablaba español. Es un idioma tan popular. Encontré mucha gente que hablaba español. Es un idioma tan popular. Especialmente encontré mucha gente mexicana. Una vez entré en una habitación. ¿Cómo se dice chatroom? No sé, habitación. Habitación de chat. No entiendo la conversación, pero porque es casi portugués y casi español. No problema. Era portunao. I can't really speak Portuguese. I just know a few phrases like eu falo português and stuff like that. Another time I went to a practice session for Croatian, Serbian, Bosnian, Montenegrin, and I was the first person to arrive in the chat room. So the host asked me something in Croatian, and I couldn't remember any Croatian at all. I'd learned quite a lot about 2 years ago for another conference, and I struggled through to say just like book, zovem se Andy, Mislim da moj hrvatski ni baš dobra or dobar. And that was all I could think of to say. But a bit later on, as I listened to people speaking, as more people arrived in the room, I started remembering some Croatian that I learned from years ago, so that was okay. Ja govorio немного по-русски, я говорил немного по-польски, ale myślę se nie bardzo dobrze. And the worst thing for me was that I went into a chat room and I stumbled across a karaoke session. So I ended up getting roped into that, and I ended up singing a song in Hindi. So the Polyglot Conference for me was all about networking with people, practicing a bit of language, listening to people's stories, watching the presentations. That was another good part of it, although I haven't watched many of them because I spent a lot of time in the chat rooms because I found that a bit addictive. So I had a good week. I went to the Polyglot Conference, my shop opened and I spoke languages. And the third thing that happened to me, which was really good, was 我的朋友给我一本书. My friend gave me this book, which is a Chinese phrase book, but it's in Czech, in the Czech language. She just came back from the Czech Republic, and 书里有汉字和拼音，是我最喜欢的动物是岛上猫。是岛上猫。This book is great. I can't stop looking at it. Between going into chat rooms and going to work and speaking languages with customers, it's a good life. I like it. So adios and la próxima vez.